Hello everybody and welcome back. So the last two videos we've already discussed the weapons, the new characters and everything to do with artifacts that are coming in 5.0. Now it's time for us to talk about some of the other things that are coming in 5.0, specifically the standard 5-star selector, as well as some of the even more newer characters that we don't know anything about yet. This is going to be a bit more of a prediction type video at this point because we don't really know a whole lot about anyone outside of Kachina, Molani, and Kinich. So let's have some fun. Alright, let's get into it. So, of course, there is the 5-star selector incoming. I plan to add more standard characters. So that's really cool because I need the high constellation, specifically 2. So this will mean that I need only one more to high constellation, so we love to see that. Alright, cool. This is of course really exciting for everyone who has been yelling and screaming for a 5-star selector since I guess the dawn of time. I'm of course pretty excited for this because that's the higher constellation that is incoming for me. But here's the thing, I had recorded an actual video about this by itself and then I decided to scrap it. So it's funny that we're here now talking about the 5-star selector again. And of course this is going to be an annual thing, so look, let's talk about it in the context of specifically buffing Aloy. Here we go. Number 1, the Luke, Chi-Chi, Tinglani, and Kaching completely and utterly unnecessary when it comes to buffing Aloy because they're on-fielders. And much like Molani, it's hard to play on-fielders with Aloy because Aloy is also a bit of an on-fielder herself. That being said though, look, I have tried to play an Aloy Chi-Chi team in the past. If anything, it ended up being sort of a way of trying to see if Aloy's 5 cryo particles from her skill end up being some sort of a boon to Chi-Chi's gigantic energy requirement rewards because they are kind of insane and it does take a while to charge up Chi-Chi's ult when she's, I guess, off-fielding at the very least. It didn't exactly work, so I guess it wasn't really enough. It's kind of annoying. So yeah, even an Aloy Chi-Chi team, not really something I could ever speak to. There is then, of course, Jean. Now, Jean is actually pretty good for French Lloyd teams, especially if you need a healer for French Lloyd, because what is a French Lloyd team? It's a team with Farina. That's right. And of course, if you don't have Kaz, Jean's actually a pretty solid alternative. Jean can group Aloy's bomblets, not as quickly, but still just as well. Sometimes not being that quick is actually a pretty good thing in and of itself. And of course, if you manage to get Jean's C2, then she also gets an attack speed buff, which is really, really nice. So overall with Jean, I would say she's a pretty solid choice. And then of course we have Mona. Mona, in my opinion, is a pretty good choice for Freeze Lloyd teams. That's right. Now, of course, she can sort of function like a budget Farina because of her gigantic Omen buff, but this would end up being more for Freeze teams as opposed to, I guess, other teams. So keep in mind, you probably end up building Blizzard Strayer on Aloy for a team like this, and at that point, this might not work so well against things like bosses. You can consider someone like Medic Mona, which is, of course, my favorite form of Mona. I did a video on this, by the way, if you're interested in hearing anything about that. If you decide to play Medic Mona, you don't need a healer because you already have a healer. Her name is Mona. And so I have tried to play Freeze Lloyd in the past with Medic Mona. It's alright. I'd say it's alright. I still prefer playing Xilonen, mainly because it's Xilonen and she can actually apply a Hydro better than Mona. But, you know, as long as you're able to freeze enemies, things usually turn out okay with the Medic Mona variant of Freeze Lloyd. And I do also have Mona at C4, and I can tell you right now, C4 Mona is pretty damn good. That being said though, the C1 of Mona is a little bit probably not working when it comes to freeze teams, which is kind of still annoying. So overall, I'd still say Mona is a pretty solid pick if you want to buff Aloy in particular. So yeah, definitely worth checking out. And then finally we have Dehya, who, like I mentioned, is going to be my personal pick. Dehya is really, really good for Burnloy and Meltloy teams. And for Meltloy in particular, Dehya's Pyro app is actually barely enough to keep up with Aloy's normal attacks. So when you want to just melt Aloy's normal attacks, you're pretty much good to go with Dehya. Unless you screw up the normal attack chain, in which case you're very much not good to go with just Dehya. You're going to need something else. Otherwise, you could just play, I guess, budget Ganyu and melt Aloy's charge attacks and her ult, and you'll be fine. So there we go. The highest biggest strength when it comes to Burnloy teams and Meltloy teams is that her Pyro app is skill based and has no energy requirements. So that's absolutely fantastic. And on top of that, if you manage to get C2, then the duration of her Pyro app is 90% uptime, as opposed to the current like 30% uptime. It's not that long at the present moment, but with C2, you don't have to use Sacrificial Greatsword in order to maximize the uptime of her Pyro app. You can use whatever weapon you want. Favge, if you want to just have even more energy on the team, that could be an option, right? So yeah, the Dehya ends up being a pretty great option when it comes to sustaining burning with someone like Emily or Fulia Kinich or Nahida. I've discussed burning with Emily in a very, very recent video. Feel free to check that out if you're interested. And of course, we do have world level 9 incoming, so the defensive utility from the Dehya can also be very, very useful as well. Overall, I would say that the Dehya is a very solid choice. And just as a sidebar, I guess because we're talking about the 5-star selector, let's also talk about overall things. Kating is still a fine choice, I guess, overall, if you don't have Clorand, who is obviously significantly more fun to play, in my opinion. Chi-Chi, look, despite getting a glow up with Farina and kind of with the Clorand childcare team, in my opinion, she's still not quite there yet, so I can't really recommend her at the present moment. The Luke is still a perfectly solid choice for anyone who doesn't have Arlecchino, and I say that as in I have C6 the Luke and I haven't played with the Luke in any meaningful capacity ever since I got Arlecchino. So that kind of happened. And then Tignari is borderline meta, in the sense that he's really, really strong and he does a lot of damage. Alhaitham is a character that is often considered one of the top 3 DPSs in the game, with Arlecchino and Neuvillette. There are a lot of comparisons out there where Tignari actually kills things faster than Alhaitham. So, you know, take that for what you will. So if you're not going to get the Dehya and you want my recommendation, I highly recommend Tignari as an overall second choice. Highly recommend. And then finally, looking ahead, we have some characters that I think I can actually speak to just a little bit. Namely, Xilonen. Because there have been some very, very suspicious early leaks about Xilonen, where she might end up being a pretty solid alternative to Kazuha. Of course, she probably can't group Aloy's bomb bullets like Kazuha can, but she can potentially offer off-field support for a longer period of time, and potentially even easier than what Kazuha can do. Especially because the scroll set can actually be activated off-field, which is a pretty big deal if you ask me. So because of that, I'm going to be holding off on doing another Should You Pull Kazuha video for now, as of recording. I will wait until we have some more solid Xilonen leaks before I start talking about whether or not you should pull Kazuha, because I think at this point in time, with Kazuha having been in the game for so long, that makes the most sense. I think it's time to just really look at it from a comparison between Kazuha and probably Xilonen. But if Xilonen turns out to not be anything like that, then I guess I'll do the world's shortest Kazuha pull video. In the sense that, should you pull Kazuha? Yes, we're done. And then, of course, we have Mavuika. Now, I'm thinking Mavuika is the Pyro Archon, namely because, well, Capitano wants to beat her ass. Answer no. And so at that point, if Mavuika is the Pyro Archon, well, we have a couple of things we could potentially infer. See, back when Fontaine first came out, the Marashosei set came out, and there was only like a couple of characters who could utilize it in any meaningful capacity, namely Xiao, and that was it. Kind of Hu Tao, theoretically DPS Shinobu, I guess, and that was basically it, right? But then Farina came out, and suddenly everyone can use the Marasho set in some meaningful capacity. So that's really, really cool. I get the feeling that because the Obsidian set at the present moment is completely irrelevant for everyone except anyone who's in Natlan, I get the feeling that if Mavuika uses her skill, everyone will be able to get a Night Soul boost. And potentially a bigger Night Soul boost, like, because it's point-based, this whole Night Soul mechanic, I get the feeling that Mavuika's skill will give Natlan characters who already have Night Soul additional Night Soul points, which is kind of big actually, if that ends up being the case. Because if you have a look at Kachina's skill, her skill duration actually doesn't exist. She doesn't actually have a skill duration. It's entirely based on Night Soul point usage. So if Mavuika provides Kachina with additional Night Soul points, then Kachina's skill duration is increased just because Mavuika is on the team and is using her skill. In a similar fashion, I expect Mavuika, therefore, to be a very, very strong addition to Burnloy teams. There have been people who are thinking that Mavuika will have some sort of attack buff because the resonance of Pyro is attack percent. So maybe she will make Bennett even less relevant than he already is. We'll just have to see. Anyway, that's pretty much it for this video as well. Let me know what you think about all of this in the comments below. Which Aloy buff are you most excited for? And which buff are you most excited for in general when it comes to everything that's coming in Natlan? Let me know in the comments. Also, let me know, do you think this worked better as a series of 3 videos as opposed to one gigantic, obscenely long video? Because I'll tell you right now, I did all of this in one single recording, but obviously split into 3, and this single recording is nearly half an hour long. So the video itself, or all the videos themselves, should end up coming out to around about 20 minutes, which... it's long. Yeah, it's definitely long. But I don't know. Let me know what you think about all of that in the comments below. Otherwise, hope you guys enjoyed. If you like this video, hit that like button, subscribe for more Genshin Impact action. I don't know what the next video is going to be because we're done with this series, so we'll see what happens next. But until next time, I will see you guys later. Thanks for watching. Bye.
The count.